What if I told you that most people don't lose money because they're bad with money? They lose money because they were never taught what money actually is. Not as a number, not as income, but as behavior. Because the truth is uncomfortable. Generational wealth is not built by intelligence. It is built by psychology. And most people are not financially failing because they lack opportunity. They are failing because they are operating inside emotional patterns they never learned to see. And by the time they realize it, it's usually too late. Because wealth doesn't disappear overnight. It disappears slowly, through decisions that feel normal at the time. And that is exactly what this story is about. Generational wealth is one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern finance. Most people hear the term and immediately think about luxury, old money lifestyles, trust funds, inheritance, or families that never have to worry about money again. But that picture is incomplete, because generational wealth is not defined by what you see. It is defined by what continues when you are no longer present. At its core, generational wealth is not a number. It is a system of behavior, structure, and decision-making that survives across time. Most people think wealth is about earning power, but generational wealth is about continuity of behavior. Income is personal and temporary. Structures are impersonal and long-term. Income ends when work stops. Structures continue even when the original builder is gone. This is the first psychological shift that separates wealthy families from everyone else. They do not ask only how to make money. They ask how to make money last beyond their lifetime. And that question changes every financial decision that follows. Because once you think in, you stop thinking like an individual and start thinking like a system. Almost every generational wealth story begins the same way. Not with comfort, not with stability, but with pressure. The first generation is usually not wealthy at all. They are builders, workers, immigrants, entrepreneurs starting from nothing, or professionals trying to escape financial limitation. Their mindset is shaped by constraint. They understand what it feels like to not have enough, and that experience becomes the foundation of discipline. In the beginning, money is survival. Every dollar matters. Every decision has weight. But something changes as they begin to accumulate even small amounts of success. They start noticing patterns. Income alone is unstable. Expenses expand quietly when unchecked, and lifestyle inflation can erase progress faster than growth creates it. They save more than they spend. They avoid unnecessary debt. They delay gratification longer than most people around them understand. Not because they are afraid of spending, but because they are building something invisible, stability. And over time, without fully realizing it, their mindset evolves. They stop thinking like workers and start thinking like builders of systems. Money becomes a structure, not an emotion. At a certain point, something fundamental shifts. Money stops being emotional and becomes structural. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" the question becomes, "What does this decision do to the system I am building?" This shift is subtle but powerful, because emotional money reacts, structural money organizes. The first generation begins separating finances into layers: money for living, money for growth, money for safety, money for long-term compounding. When everything is mixed together, everything becomes vulnerable, and vulnerable systems collapse under emotional pressure. So the goal becomes control, not over life itself, but over financial behavior. They begin to understand that money is not a single thing. It is a network of decisions, and every decision has consequences that extend far beyond the moment it is made. This is where financial maturity begins, not in income, but in structure. The second generation experiences wealth differently. They do not see the struggle. They see the system that was built to survive it. They do not witness chaos. They witness order. This creates a psychological difference that is often overlooked, because when you grow up inside stability, you do not fully understand instability. So the role of education becomes critical, not just academic education, but financial education. How debt functions when used correctly and incorrectly, how assets differ from income, how ownership creates leverage, and how financial decisions compound over time. But more importantly, they are taught mindset. They are not told to fear money, they are taught to understand it. This creates a different relationship with financial decisions. Fear leads to avoidance, understanding leads to control, and control leads to continuity.
The second generation does not build from zero, they build on structure.
But whether they strengthen it or weaken it depends entirely on what they learn from it. One of the most uncomfortable truths in finance is that most wealth does not disappear in creation, it disappears in transition. Between decisions, between generations, between emotional reactions, a sudden lifestyle expansion, a risky investment driven by ego, a panic decision during market fee, or simply lack of understanding of how systems work. Wealth is rarely destroyed in one dramatic moment. It is eroded slowly through repeated emotional decisions. This is why discipline matters more than intelligence, because most financial failures are not caused by lack of knowledge. They are caused by lack of consistency. And consistency is a behavioral trait, not an intellectual one. This is also why generational wealth families focus heavily on structure, because structure reduces emotional decision-making. And emotional decisions are where most wealth is lost. In long-term wealth systems, structure is everything. Not shortcuts, not manipulation, but organization. Wealth-aware families often think in terms of legal frameworks that already exist within financial systems. They consider timing of income and investments, ownership structures for assets, long-term holding strategies, reinvestment behavior, and estate planning. Across generations, these are not tricks. They are frameworks, and understanding them changes behavior. Most people think taxes are something that simply happens to them. Wealth-aware individuals think about how financial decisions interact with systems already in place. This is not about avoidance. It is about awareness. Because every financial decision has long-term consequences, not just immediate ones. And the difference between short-term thinking and long-term thinking often determines whether wealth grows or slowly disappears. By the third generation, the mindset changes again. The focus is no longer building wealth from nothing. It is preserving what already exists. This creates a shift from aggression to responsibility, from expansion to protection, from growth at all costs to stability over time. At this stage, families often focus on diversification, not depending on one investment, not concentrating risk into a single point of failure. They focus on reducing emotional decision-making because they understand that most wealth is not lost in markets. It is lost in reactions. So the third generation becomes the stabilizer, the protector of systems, the one responsible for ensuring that short-term emotions do not destroy long-term structure. One of the most surprising truths in finance is that intelligence is not enough. Many people who lose money are intelligent, educated, even experienced. But intelligence does not remove emotional bias. In many cases, it makes people better at justifying emotional decisions. This is why behavior matters more than knowledge. Wealth is not protected by understanding markets alone. It is protected by understanding yourself, your impulses, your reactions, not theory. And behavior determines outcomes more than intelligence ever will. Most people never build generational wealth, not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack consistency over time. Modern financial life rewards speed, but generational wealth requires patience, and patience is uncomfortable in a world built on instant feedback. Short-term thinking dominates long-term planning. Emotional decisions override structured systems, and without structure, even high income collapses over time. Compounding looks small at the beginning, almost insignificant, but over time, it becomes exponential, and most people never stay consistent long enough to see that phase. Not because they cannot, but because modern environments rarely encourage it. At the deepest level, generational wealth is not about money at all. It is about behavior across time, how they react to opportunity, how they handle success, how they respond to fear, and how they make decisions when no one is watching. Money is neutral. It does not create behavior. It amplifies it. So the real inheritance is not financial. It is psychological. Because generational wealth is not what you leave behind. It is what continues without you. And that is why some systems last for generations, while others disappear in a single transition.